Hello. So there's a lot of stuff going on in Iran, kind of. Um, People have been asking me about it. I've been trying to pay attention to it. The fact of the matter is, um, I think uh, it's the closest the regime in Iran has come to falling since probably the early '80s when they were the weakest. Um, Maybe since the first Ayatollah passed away and Khamenei was chosen. Uh, I don't like to sit here and talk to myself. Um, if anybody is interested in having a discussion, hello, Adam. Um, you can jump on. Otherwise, you can sit here and watch uh, my inept sewing attempts fail uh, to achieve my goals. But that's what I'm gonna do. Nope, sorry, Andrew, you're not first. You're second. Uh, Lucky, stop. Go play with your toys. I would not go back to Iran if the Shah returns. Not that I think there's any sort of possibility of the Shah returning, but I have I feel zero allegiance to Iran in any way. I was very willing um, to, and I did renounce my lucky stop. Renounce my citizenship when I became an American citizen. I was serious about that. I didn't let the Iranian government know about it because, frankly, I could care less about them. Uh, Lucky, could you play with some of your toys? Like that one? Yeah. See? That one's a good one for you to play with. The problem is he only likes to play with toys because he wants to play with me. The same thing happened. So last night, some people were over, um, and somebody had their dog, and uh, I brought infinite toys, more toys than any dogs should ever need. And the two of them were fighting over the one ball they both liked. And um, that was that. They were going to fight over that ball, regardless of anything any of us said. And that's the problem with having a dog. dog wants to play with you. Even if you don't have the time to play with him. Basically, yeah, they wanted. I mean, they weren't fighting, but well, they would fight a little bit. Lucky wanted to play with the other dog, and I think the other dog, uh, who's much older, had had enough of. Shalom,
Shalom.
love.
Shalom.
מה שלומך?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I am doing okay. I am doing okay. Happy New Year.
Yeah. So everybody
Yeah.
jumped in, so you will feel virtually not alone.
Why, thank you. You're still quarantined from the grandchildren because of the flu? Or not so?
No, actually, my son has slight pneumonia and he's taking antibiotics, but I don't think it's going to stop us from meeting.
Uh-huh.
So I took the grandchild from kindergarten on Thursday,
Uh-huh.
and we had fun in my car. Showed him all the buttons he can press, and some buttons make noise and some buttons turn on lights. Car is a very good toy for little children. And we're gonna meet tomorrow morning.
How old is the grandchild?
Well, slightly more than a year.
Ah, baby.
Just the right age to start pressing buttons.
Yeah. Buttons can be fun when you're one.
Yeah.
Walking already?
Theoretically, he can walk when he wants to.
Uh-huh.
Not very keen on walking.
Uh-huh. Pick me up? Or how do you say pick me up in Hebrew?
It doesn't say, he cannot speak much, but he wants to be picked up. It's much more efficient.
Universal hand signal. Ah!
Yeah. Yeah.
I recognize that one. Yeah.
Yeah, but when he's pushed to a corner, he can walk.
Uh-huh.
I had a child who just refused to walk till about the age of 4 or 5.
Wow.
He just refused.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it was contextual. He refused to walk on a weekday, but he walk on a Saturday.
Okay, so Shabbat, he would give you some rest?
No.
Hey, Ron.
Echo.
Yeah, you're echoing, Ron. There we go.
Okay, so what we do on a Saturday, we go hiking somewhere.
Uh-huh.
And I will not carry him also the hike on my shoulder. So put him on the ground and we walk together.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes quite rough terrain, going up and down creeks.
Mm-hmm.
And on Sunday morning, I will drive him to a special clinic all the way in Jaffa. Because the baby cannot walk and he needs to go to a clinic to fix it.
Right. Was that your wife's command or somebody else's command?
No, I mean, it's obvious that if you have a boy that doesn't walk at the age of 4, you take him to some kind of a clinic.
Okay.
And they will do exercise. They made him stand on balls and made him climb on ladder and things like that, trying to develop the muscles or the sense of balance or whatever's gone wrong.
Right.
And while I was waiting, I mean, he was doing the exercise every day. I was telling about the nice trip we had the day before and how we went walking in this creek or another creek.
And they thought you were crazy.
And therefore, this poor father is delusional. And then he suddenly said, "Okay, no, fine.
I'll
It's time
walk.
for yeah." And now he's actually a good dancer.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's one of the very difficult things about I mean, eventually things become clear, but when you are a behavioral therapist, you oftentimes have to worry, and it's not very clear um, what's true, what's not true, who's telling you the real thing, who's telling you something else. It can be very difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. Getting to extract the truth out of people is never echo. Getting to extract truth out of people is quite difficult.
Ron, I'm guessing that what's going on is your
YouTube.
yeah, you probably still have your YouTube. Oh, there he goes. Yeah.
Sunrise wants you to tell her what's happening in Iran. I have no idea. I have no connection. I have.
Mahyar Tusi has been going on about Iran all week, but I haven't watched any of the videos. What's happening? If I remember who Mahyar Tusi is, and forgive me if I recommended him and now I'm forgetting who he is, but he he's one of these monarchists, Iranian monarchists, if I remember correctly. And look, the situation in Iran is unstable, more unstable than it has been recently, certainly any time in the past 25 years. And I was listening to Khaviv Ratigur speaking with Roya Hakakian. This is in English, so anybody who wants to listen hopefully would be able to. And so what the only thing she said that kind of surprised me was she doesn't think that the crown prince has any capacity whatsoever to be influential in Iran. I don't know if that's wishful thinking on her part. She has been involved in the Council for on Foreign Relations, so I would have assumed that she would have had a more positive view of their puppet. But I mean, what they discussed was the question of, okay, let's say the regime does fall. No, what are you going to do now? Who's going to take over? Who's going to be able to do anything? And I agreed with her. So this is my personal bias coming through, confirmation bias coming through. The experts who know the most are always the ones that agree with me. Is that the best hope anybody has is that somebody will from the inside there's movement to try to do something new. And if there is, the fact is that despite all our wishes that it were different, we're probably not going to know who that person is. My hope is still on Hassan Khomeini, the first Ayatollah's grandson, who isn't exactly a Westerner. He's not exactly who I would choose to be the supreme leader of Iran. If I could nominate the chief rabbi of North Tel Aviv, I would. But he's a hell of a lot better than anybody who's affiliated with the IRGC, which is what is the current case. And so, as they say in Yiddish, ich weiß nicht. I don't know. You have any opinions, Yoav?
I have no idea what's happening in Iran, but I agree with you that the puppets are not an alternative, never are. And I don't know of any organized opposition movement. All I hear is that the society is layered into professions. You have the merchants and the students and the people in the countryside, but I never heard of any movement that is encompassing the whole country. And you have ethnic differences on top of that.
Adam asks, is regime in Iran falling means only the leaders would be replaced, or would that leads to constitutional change? So what most people mean by regime change is that the form of government would fundamentally be changed, which frankly I think is not a serious hope that any serious person has. I mean, so a regime change, most people mean, for example, instead of having a supreme leader who is an Ayatollah and the various organs of Shiite clergy being having control over who can run in the elections, that you would end up with something more along the lines of a constitutional republic with Pahlavi back as a weak monarch, etc., etc. Do I see that happening? I don't see that happening. If what is the truth in Iran right now, which is that, for example, the actual religious hierarchy has very little command and control over who is the leading Ayatollah supposedly in Iran, because the fact is that by no religious standard was Ali Khamenei the person most well thought of by Iranian clergy to be the leading Ayatollah. So instead of what is currently the case, which is the IRGC, which is the Revolutionary Guard, or Sepah Pastaran as they're known, that they are choosing who the religious leaders are. And apparently there was a recent scandal where one of the senior people who one of the senior generals in Sepah, he was walking his daughter down the aisle for her wedding, and she was not dressed in a manner appropriate to a let's put it this way, if her father hadn't been a general and that video had gotten out, she would have been receiving lashes. Or at the very least, a suspended sentence for lashes, because Iran does that. So is that a form of regime change? I would say yes. I'm not sure everyone would agree with me. And that's the form of regime change that I personally would favor, because as far as I am concerned, the idea that you have actual religious Muslims as opposed to fake religious Muslims running Iran is an improvement, because believe it or not, there are religious Muslims who actually believe in God, and because they believe in God, they're not necessarily nihilistic, suicidal people who are willing to destroy an entire country in order to eminentize the eschaton. Yeah, a Zoroastrian state in Iran would be a return to the Shah. I don't see that happening. Any opinions, Yoav?
Well, since I don't know what's happening in Iran,
Yeah.
I'll have to look at the global picture.
Mm-hmm.
And I assume, for sake of simplicity, that Russia and China are on one side, that are playing as one player, and that Iran is in their sphere of influence, and they don't want to lose it. But neither China nor Russia actually want the destruction of the state of Israel. It's just not on their agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And they can easily strike a deal with Trump that the West is staying out of the internal affairs of Iran and leaving it under the influence of Russia and China. And in the return, the West gets the Arab Peninsula, which is good enough. And in that case, the current regime is replaced by an identical regime in all but one aspect, that has no political aspiration outside the border of Iran.
I'll put a caveat to that. So, do you know where Karbala is?
Is it in Iraq?
It is in Iraq. So,
Yeah, I didn't mention Iraq. I said the Arab Peninsula.
aha.
Iraq is an issue. It's the Middle East. There's always an issue. Always there.
So if Iran is willing to go back to only having territorial designs on Iraq, which I think is probably what we're looking at with Hassan Khomeini. To the west, it will look very, very similar if the third Ayatollah of the Islamic Republic of Iran is the grandson of the first Ayatollah of the Islamic Republic of Iran. I would say that that would be as much regime change as I dare to hope for in Iran. And along the lines of what Yoav is saying, I think him becoming Ayatollah would be very similar to what Yoav is saying actually coming to fruition. We have somebody of note.
Yeah.
Of note.
Yeah.
Yes. A widely known podcaster.
Widely known podcaster and Middle Eastern geopolitical expert.
Yes.
Yep. Any comments on the aspiration of Iran over Iraq?
I think that those two, I mean, there's so many cultural, linguistic, and historical connections. Part of me wonders why Iraq hasn't been divided into a couple different countries. Like, you know,
Turkey.
What?
Turkey.
Right. Give Kurdistan to Turkey. Give the
No.
Oh,
Turkey would not want
Turkey's
Kurds.
Turkey's getting along better with its Kurds. I've heard Turkey and its own Kurds are doing pretty well at the moment. Maybe
Turkey has many more Kurds than the maximum number of Kurds Turkey wants to have, which is 0.
All right. Well, okay.
Well, I told you once, it's the Middle East. Don't assume any two persons in the Middle East can live in peace.
Well, I mean, from what it sounds like to me, and I don't know if the things that I listen to or read are sensationalizing or not, because there's always, I feel like, an over optimism in the West that the Iranian regime will just collapse and that there's apparently really bad water problems in Iran that are like getting like, you know, you might need to evacuate Tehran level bad.
Yes, but this has been going on. I mean, this has been progressively getting worse for the past 10 years.
Well, that's the thing about a water crisis is it's a vague problem until it's a life and death problem. And that the life and death version of the problem might be on the doorstep any moment. And
apparently, the current protests have a lot more to do with the official change of the exchange rate. I was listening to a regime propaganda channel called Jalal, something like that. But they were saying the problem is that the president is weak and he should be killing, and I quote, 3,000 people, and the problems would be over.
Which 3,000 people?
Probably the 3,000 people who are in Evin prison right now.
Yeah. I mean, I do generally feel like Iran is probably the country furthest away from its potential on the world stage at the moment. I I have met multiple Iranian people. I've never met a stupid Iranian, but maybe those are just the ones that come to the United States. But there seems to be at least a sufficient quantity of highly intelligent, well-educated Iranians. And like Iran has been the most important country in the world for more of human history than basically any other country, except for possibly Iraq. Um, and I feel like there's gotta be some way for that to change.
Well, first of all, I think your history is a bit off. I think Rome definitely outdid the both of them.
Well, I mean, but there are like thousands of years of human history where basically the only thing going on is like Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Persia.
Right.
And like that, and there, those are like literally thousands of years that we tend to forget about. We just kind of wrap that all up into ancient history, but call it from like 6,000 BC to 2000 BC. They were the only show on planet Earth.
Yeah.
I count 1,200 years of them being a prominent empire.
1,200 years is longer than Rome by most counts.
Different incarnations, not the same empire, but
Yeah.
still Persian and in the same. Okay, so I think one of the issues in Iran is they are already overextended. They are ruling over Balochistan and other areas which they have no business to be in. And that keeps their internal unity, because the Iranians know that if they fall too much into internal disagreement, they are going to, on the best case, lose their extra territories and more likely be pounced on by their neighbors.
Pounced on by their neighbors is more, I think, the worry, because while Iran's central government has very loose control on its various regions, I don't think any of the regions have serious desire to have their own international presence and international relations, unless they want to become part of a neighboring country. That's the thing. That's the possibility.
But when you've got such well-organized, competent neighbors like Iran, which of Iran's neighbors are even like in any state to do anything besides perhaps Turkey? Well, I guess there's the neighbors across the Gulf, but
I don't think it's going to be a small scale. It's just nomad or semi-nomad tribes creeping in and taking over in a minor way.
Border disputes.
Mm-hmm. So, how's Israel feeling these days?
We are in an election year.
Uh-huh.
And there's going to be a showdown between the government and the Supreme Court. I think most likely event is that the Supreme Court will declare the election result illegal for one technical reason or another.
Wow.
That's what I see in my crystal ball. And then it's the question that Yaakov asked: who has the who has the actual power in the region? And the answer is the American president. So that dispute will have to be settled by from the outside.
The dispute between the Israeli Supreme Court and the president and the president of Israel, or prime minister, will be settled by the U.S. president?
Because it will get to a show of force.
Let me explain the situation maybe a little bit better for Stan.
Sure, please do.
So you know how in Europe they have invalidated elections because far right candidates have won?
Russian influence, yes.
Russian influence, whatever.
Yeah.
They've invalidated elections.
Romania, right, was sort of the most pertinent example, I think.
I don't remember, but yes.
Yeah, that's the country.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a gentleman I refer to as the King of Israel named Aaron Barak.
Okay.
Aaron Barak, no relation to Ehud Barak, the former prime minister, was the Chief Justice of the Israeli Supreme Court. And to my great surprise, the lawyer for Benjamin Netanyahu in his genocide trial before the International Criminal Courts recently. And he is a single man wrecking force of the left in Israel and the establishment in Israel. And all the people who are descended from the dynasts of the Labor Party from 70 years ago in Israel. What did I get wrong so far, Yoav? Too much for you to comment on?
No, I'm trying to find what details you've got wrong.
Uh-huh.
Well, it is also the influence of the American Democratic Party. They have doing. I mean, why should they ruin only one or two countries? Why not make destruction global?
So, when Yoav says there will be a showdown between the Israeli Supreme Court and the elections and Netanyahu, I think what he means is that so the Israeli Supreme Court is basically Aaron Barak and people Aaron Barak has hand selected to be on any of the secular courts in Israel for the past 50 years. This is why I refer to the man as Melech Israel, as the King of Israel. And so basically every single member of the Supreme Court.
They even get to decide who is going to be the Benjamin Netanyahu's chauffeur. Yeah, no joke.
I believe you. Anyway, so they certainly, if they could get away with it, and frankly, I have to say, the more I think about it, the more the complaints the Trump administration has had about Europe and their lack of commitment to democracy applies to Israel.
Okay, now let's leave aside wild speculations and let's stick to the facts as they have been revealed in court by documents and sworn statements. 10 years ago, the deep state has declared a hunting season on the prime minister. and they set a whole department for illegal eavesdropping on the prime minister and all his families and whoever was working with him. So there were people in the police whose only job for years was to conduct those illegal eavesdropping on the prime minister. And they were looking for some kind of a corruption case to net him. And they couldn't find anything but an event some 10 years ago when his little boy got a Bugs Bunny doll from a millionaire. Or when he was visiting a neighbor, his wife drank a couple of glasses of champagne. And there's a trial going on.
And has been for 6 years.
For 6 years on at least 3 different corruption charges. One of them was bribery. And the prime minister is forced to testify in court some 3 or 4 days a week during a war on whatever he thinks the Bugs Bunny doll constitutes an allowed gift or not. And nobody is stopping it, certainly not the judges. Politically, he's gaining a lot of ground because even people who would tend to think by default, well, he's a politician, of course he's corrupt. People who there are not a lot of them, but increasingly, because it has been going for years, people who are paying any attention to what's going on, starting to realize that it's actually proved without any reasonable doubt that neither the man nor his wife are corrupt. Because you can really go through every expense and every gift he was receiving in the last 10 years, and any conversation he had with anybody in the last 10 years, and you can prove without reasonable doubt that there was nothing. So the man and his family are positively proven to be innocent. And the corruption of the prosecution, which includes the Israeli police and all of the legal system up to the Supreme Court, is out there for all to see. So he's going to win these elections if nothing untoward happens. By my prediction, and by polls, by a very large margin. This is why the Supreme Court will decide that this is obviously a fraud.
That sounds tricky.
So, one more note about Aaron Barak, my favorite Israeli. So Israel doesn't have a constitution. And lacking a constitution, the Supreme Court had to decide how something that the Knesset, the parliament, has decided would be unconstitutional.
It would seemingly be tricky to call something unconstitutional if there was no constitution.
Oh, easy, whatever they don't like.
Yeah, okay.
And Aaron Barak came up with an ingenious idea that anything he doesn't think is reasonable, is unconstitutional in Israel.
So he's a living, breathing constitution.
The man is the king of Israel. I am not joking when I call him Aaron Melech Israel.
Now, the good news is that since I hold an unjustified, irrational belief that we are going to survive this crisis, then on the assumption that we are going to survive this crisis, what emerges is a country that is not, well, there ought to be some kind of a high, of a Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court of the future will more likely coherent with the vision of Yaakov Faturecci than with the vision of Aaron Barak.
What do you have you even heard of the idea that has become popular among the Dati Leumi of Israel having a bicameral parliament with a Sanhedrin as the higher of rabbis as the higher parliament, a higher upper house? Has this even pierced public knowledge? Or
No, not at all. But I have come to this conclusion independently.
that should be the thing that happens.
That what will happen is something along these lines. If you look at the demographics
Yeah.
and the complete disappearance of any moral backbone behind the secular courts, then it's either total destruction or such an option.
Are people talking about such things?
No,
No?
no,
Because
no.
the Dati Leumi have been talking about this for a good 20 years.
Oh yeah, but except from Chezi, I'm not in their circles at all.
They even tried to reconstitute the Sanhedrin, which failed abysmally, but they tried it.
Well,
Sam, what would your evangelical friends think if Israel suddenly had a Sanhedrin again?
I don't know what they'd think. That would probably be further signs that you guys are getting close.
Yeah, I'm sure the dispensationalists will be
The
talking about it.
dispensationalists would think that you guys are getting close, and then if there are any red cows running around, then that's when things get really, really interesting.
All the red cows. It's so funny. Like all the red cows are simply like, I don't think any Jews, religious, like even the crazy Zionists are not thinking of the Para Aduma. But like it's what the Christians talk about incessantly. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
And all these red cows come from Texas, obviously.
You know, I mean, hook 'em horns.
Yeah.
well, what Chezi says is that he agrees with you that the temple will only be built by a miracle.
Mhm.
But he says the miracle is that we're going to agree about this Sanhedrin.
Temples have been built by less than that before.
So the idea of the Sanhedrin is that it would be possible for the various rabbis. So this is not as insane as it may sound to somebody who's not Jewish, but it's still pretty insane. So the Talmudic study acts as a very precise IQ test. Very precise, especially in the upper reaches. More of a precise IQ test in the upper reaches than I think any other attempt at an IQ test has done.
I will give you an example. There was this rabbi called Ovadia Yosef, who was coming from too much from the east.
He was born in Iraq.
Yeah, to fit the prejudices of the people coming from the west. But still, his knowledge, his demonstrated IQ, let's say, was such that there was absolutely no dispute about his supremacy, even though he came from Iraq.
Right. Nobody can dismiss him. And if there was such a thing as a Sanhedrin, when he was alive, he would undisputedly have been a member of it. Now, whether he would have been the head of it, that's a bigger problem, I think. But whittling down the number of rabbis who could sit on a Sanhedrin to, let's say, a few hundred in Israel, maybe a few thousand in Israel. Obviously, the prescribed number is 71. Whittling them down to a couple of thousand people would not be difficult. Getting them down to 71 and choosing mi Yoshev Barosh, who gets to be the head of the Sanhedrin, that's something I don't see ever happening.
Well,
What kind of other issues,
authority-
like a huge Arabic population, last of the remaining secular Jews, lots of quarreling faction that will have to be incorporated. But something will be cooked up.
What were you saying, Sam?
What sort of authority is the Sanhedrin supposed to have in this imagined scenario?
It would be like the House of Lords in England.
Okay.
It would be precisely the House of Lords in England, which used to be the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the problem is the lack of constitution.
Yeah.
Getting a constitution agreed upon is no easy thing, because you kind of need a authority structure or some goodwill in some people to do it. The more I think about it, the more miraculous I feel like it is that America happened at all the way that it did. But
I do not disagree with you.
Yeah. Because you read about the French Revolution, and the constant problem is like, all right, we need a new authority, we need a new constitution, we need a new, France. But there was no mutually agreed upon authority structure to bring it about, right? And so you keep having these half-hearted attempts, or attempts that one side likes but the other side doesn't, right? But no one ever thinks it's quite good enough. You keep going through this cycle and cycle and cycle again, and really the only thing that brings it to an end is a Napoleon or someone like that, who can just by force make something happen. And how America got around this problem, I suppose it was sort of the goodwill built around George Washington after the Revolutionary War, and just the really, high respect and high levels of agreement among the leaders of the American colonies at that moment. It's really kind of crazy when you think about it, that there really wasn't that much bickering, and that they were able to do it without, too much of the usual kind of politicking.
Adam says, I saw Arabic-speaking people in Tennessee complaining about their dialect not being recognized. Okay.
He also says that Persia continued as a major power after Islam, which I agree, but I was giving them the 1,200 years before Islam, and you can add Islamic Persia on top of that.
Right. I think we were talking more about which countries were world hegemon for longest, not major powers. Iran certainly has been a major power since the beginning of history until probably the rise of Russia in what, the 1500s?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe to change the subject just a bit, I am expecting major events in the Ukraine in the next few days.
Next few days? What are you expecting to happen in the next few days?
A major escalation. Always for the bad, but a major escalation.
Why?
Why?
Because this event of the attack on the residence of Putin, have you heard of it?
Yes.
No.
Yeah, I did hear about that.
Okay.
Ukraine sent like a swarm of, I don't know, however many drones to try and attack.
The problem is that there wasn't some apparent American involvement in that, because it was in the middle of peace negotiation, and Trump was on the phone to Putin when this happened, and Trump actually told him, "Well, stay on the phone for a couple of hours because I want to talk with the Ukrainian. I will come back to you." So Trump, perhaps inadvertently, told him, "Stay in place and don't move, because the bombers are coming at you." Which I don't blame. I don't blame Trump in doing so, but it gives the Russians a very strong diplomatic case to tell America, now you stay out of the way and we're going to finish it.
Donald Trump sometimes does things even I think are silly. If you're gonna kill Putin, at least don't get involved.
Yeah, this is why I don't think. I mean, I don't. The chances of success were not such that I don't think that Trump, even if he was so inclined, I don't think he would have risked it. But the situation as it stands is that the Russians are preparing something big.
But what can they even do?
They're telling everybody, stay away. We have every right to do whatever we're going to do, and it's not going to be pleasant.
But what are they going to do that they haven't been doing before?
Yeah. What cards do they still have in their hand that aren't even too features for they themselves to use?
They're not going to use atomic weapons.
No.
They're already killing civilians.
Yeah.
There are names of weapons mentioned. They have the capabilities. I'm not going to second guess them. Not going to give them any ideas, but of a hot-blooded Middle Eastern that I am, I have some ideas what they can do.
But then what happens in retaliation?
Well, the idea is that because of these certain circumstances, there's not going to be any retaliation. That's why I think there's something insignificant that's going to happen. It's going to be something strong and one-sided.
I mean, I feel like the Ukrainian war is basically, it's already pretty clear that no side is really going to win. That offense is way harder than defense in this sort of conflict. And when offense is harder than defense, it means that the front lines tend to settle into a very fixed spot with only minimal gains here and there, and that there's like both the obvious peace settlement, but it, for whatever reason, often takes way longer than you might think to get there, of just settling where the front line is.
Okay, first, you're not thinking like a Russian. And second, it's not a stalemate. Now, thinking as a Russian is writing a differential equation. And the solution is going to be some kind of an exponential. And you're perfectly willing to see no apparent changes in the first 2 years, as long as you see some change in the next 2 years, and huge change in the final 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're saying is no change in the first 2 years, and some change in the current 2 years, and I think exponential explosion in the final 2 years.
Mm-hmm. So
because I know for a fact that the Russians have written the equations, and they're updating them constantly as new data arrives.
I'm sure that some Russian somewhere is writing some good equations, but that doesn't mean that that's the person that is in charge or making the decisions. I generally take what's happening to be that Putin doesn't want NATO, or doesn't want Ukraine in NATO. And the easiest way to do that is you can't join NATO if there's an ongoing conflict in your borders. And that's what he did in Georgia. And maybe there's another example like Transnistria. And that his general goal is like, okay, we can handle low-level ongoing conflict at the benefit of not letting NATO creep closer to us. And that's really the reason why he doesn't want peace. But that he doesn't have very many cards he can play. Maybe he can launch more missiles this month, but that means that he has to launch fewer in the next couple months. And that's really about it. And maybe he is hoping that, it's a stalemate until one side collapses, and then they collapse before I collapse, and then I get to win. But there's also the risk that that doesn't go the way that he thinks. And that there is severe damage being done to Russia's oil and gas infrastructure that they don't really have the capability to rebuild. And that's going to get to them at some point too. So I don't know. I generally feel like the US needs to wake up and realize that our real only enemy, we only actually have one enemy at the moment that is capable of even being called enemy by the word, and that's China. And that the only country that we need to be concerned about in their aggressions is China. And that Russia is not our enemy. We just don't really actually have, it doesn't really matter to us where the border between Ukraine and Russia is. A few kilometers this way, a few kilometers that way. That's of no great security matter for the United States. And that we should come to some agreement with Russia. And then we should even, if not ally with Russia, because that kind of is a little bit beyond the pale, but at least work with them in such a way where they feel like they don't have to be completely used and subservient to China.
I think you are miscalculating on Putin, because I think it's pretty absurd to call the Ukraine conflict a low-level war.
I'm not saying it's a low-level war. I mean, obviously, tons of people are dying, and there's a lot of hardware going into it and a lot of money. I'm not saying that it is trivial in scale, but I'm saying that it is trivial in a certain sense of outcome. And that basically the U.S. has already gotten what it needed out of the conflict. Russia did not get to conquer Ukraine. Russia's army has been embarrassed. Almost all of their major equipment has been destroyed. They've lost hundreds of thousands of their prime fighting age population, and that their ability to attack a Western country is basically gone at this point. and we understand basically everything about how they work and operate. And if they were to ever attack a different country, like a NATO country, then we would take the gloves off and we would know exactly how to beat them. I think that the U.S. has already gotten everything that we need out of this, and that this continued conflict is maybe trying to wait for Russia to collapse. It's like, I think it's sort of the opposite mentality of Russia that,
Again,
hey, go ahead.
what is Putin getting out of the continued conflict, and why is he continuing it?
I think I've said at least one potential reason is that he doesn't want Ukraine to join NATO, and if there's an ongoing conflict in the borders, then it prevents them from being able to join NATO. I think that that is a concrete thing that he gets out of it, continuing to go forward. I think that he is scared of having Russian leaders don't last very long if they've lost a war. And so as long as there's some hope or some glimmer of something about the conflict still going on, then he doesn't have the pistol at the back of his head get the trigger pulled. And so I think it's some combination of those things.
Okay, so as the NATO thing, I don't think makes sense, because this is costing him. It's cost him probably 100,000 soldiers,
at least, yeah. If you include injured. Yeah.
And the new reason you added means that he can't let this war go. And I think you're right about that.
Yeah.
Meaning, this is a much more intractable situation than you were describing it as.
Yeah. Unless you could give him some sort of face-saving, pseudo victory. But I think that the West wants a moral victory too.
Correct.
I think that's a big part of the reason why the West is wanting the conflict is we want to be like, we stood up to totalitarianism and all is right in the world. Bad guys get punished, the good guys win. This is how the world is supposed to work because we are the moral arbiters of the whole show, and that sort of thing. So I think that desire for moral victory from the West is part of what's keeping it going in the other direction. And then Putin has it's not like he wants a moral victory, he wants a victory. And so I think that's part of why it's still happening. I'm saying I really at this point don't care about whether or not I think the moral victory for the West should be shelved, and that we already got what we wanted out of the conflict when you look at it for all the reasons I already said. Russia was extremely embarrassed and weakened, and is much less of a threat now than they were 5 years ago. And that we need them for other things, maybe not like a full alliance, like I said, but at least to not have them be completely bent over and prostrate before China. And because Russia's scared of China too. Russia is this giant half of their country that is basically indefensible in a general land war sense. The only reason why it's defended is because of their nuclear threat. And China sees all this energy and raw materials in Eastern Russia that's right on their doorstep. And that is thousands and thousands of miles away from Moscow or St. Petersburg. And they would love it. And Russia knows that they would love it.
You are eminently reasonable, and I am sure geopolitics and internal national politics will be equally eminently reasonable as they are wont to always be. Because, yeah, reason always wins in these situations.
Right. There's like literally like one railroad that connects like Eastern Russia to Western Russia. If you ignored nuclear missiles, taking Eastern Russia would be the easiest thing to ever happen. You like cut the railroad and then you move your people in from China, and it would be a walk in the park. The only reason why Russia holds on to it is their nuclear umbrella. But if there is, there are ways around the nuclear umbrella, and it's basically financial coercion or something like that, where China basically takes it from Russia on paper, but not, in actual fact, because Russia is so desperate that they basically have to sign it away to stay alive.
I've got a related question. Why don't they do with Xi Jinping what they did with Franco? You know,
Who are they?
Who's the they?
They.
Yeah,
the people of China.
the people of China. Why don't the
Do you
people?
know how many people are there in China?
Too many.
Actually, no one knows. There's a whole YouTube culture of trying to guess what the population of China is. Like, you can go down this YouTube rabbit trail. It's very fascinating that there are many people who speculate that the population of China is nowhere near what the official statistics say that it is.
Andrew, I have an idea. How about you call your grandfather, who
And
knows
have him
a
go
lot
around and
more-
count. Yeah, could
a
he go
lot
around and
more
count
than
everything?
any of us, and see what he tells you? And I assure you, the information he gives you will be far, far more correct than anything any of us have to say.
I
Okay, so
try to keep my
want-
Chinese ties on the down low.
I never would have seen it coming.
comments. Never can one man rule over a country as big as China. And obviously there's an oligarchy that is actually running the place, and it could be equivalent with the Communist Party. And there is always a deal between the supreme ruler and the oligarchy. The question is, when will be the oligarchy dissatisfied with the deal and replace the man at the top? And this is something that is completely obscure. I mean, we have absolutely no idea of what's happening in backrooms in Beijing.
And the authoritarian doesn't, it's not like they're powerless either. They have bargaining chips and power that they can use against the oligarchy as well.
Yeah.
So it's risky and difficult to get rid of a really strong one.
But there is some deal. We don't know what the deal is. We don't know what the balance of power is. The question is, can they hope for any better results from a different leader? That's also a relevant question. Now, as to Russia and China, there was the Russian-Japan War. I think it's 1905. And this is when Russia realized that they're completely exposed to the East. They cannot. It's no longer a state, a matter of us Russian using Western technology against backward nomads. When the Russians faced Japan, they lost. And in the Second World War, they were as concerned about Japan as they were concerned about Germany. And in the version of history that I believe in, which is not the mainstream version, they kept significant forces, maybe half of the forces, on their border with the Japanese risk, until such time that they realized that Japan is no longer an existential threat, and they can channel those forces back to the West, and then finished off with Germany. So yeah, the Russians are absolutely aware of what is happening, but I think they're really trying to make the economic ties with China so strong that they cannot be severed. Both sides are trying to get themselves so much entangled with each other to make sure that the other cannot live without, to make sure that the alliance is permanent.
I think that is China's current strategy, is that just finding multiple sources of making themselves economically indispensable to the United States and the West. such that they can use that as leverage, whether it's solar panels or rare earth or electric car batteries or things along those lines, smartphones, etc. That if you want your standard of living, you need us, and because you need us, that means we get at least this amount of what we want.
Honestly, I am surprised that Trump's moves have not collapsed the American economy and had much worse. Like, I mean, I was wavering between, okay, this is nuts, and we can't kamikaze ourselves in order to try to save ourselves, and the implications of this being successful is good enough that we can take some serious pain as Americans. And I'm not seeing serious pain, and I'm not seeing
my high level view of what I think will happen over the next century is I think there is basically one story and one story only in geopolitics for the rest of the 21st century, and it's how many humans are in your country and how fast is that shrinking. And that almost every country on earth will be shrinking if it isn't already. Many countries already are. China is probably, in terms of absolute numbers, shrinking the fastest of any country on a daily or yearly basis. There are only a few countries that are not in sub-Saharan Africa that are growing, and it is the United States and Israel. Just for whatever reason, and it's not Israel has enough babies themselves. The United States almost has enough babies, but we can immigrate enough babies or enough adults from elsewhere to make up for our baby gap and even continue to grow. And there are almost no countries that are going to be capable of this. That I think that the birth rate is collapsing so fast, and that it's going to have such dramatic consequences. Like if you make a graph of the population of planet Earth, it was like level, barely moving, skyrocketed in the 1800s and 1900s and through the 21st century because of food technology and health technology, basically, right? And, more people lived, fewer people died. Population exploded. And now it's cresting because of basically not disease or war or death, but because of just, lack of reproduction. The pill and everything comes with it. And then what will happen is it will crash with current projections almost as fast as it grew in the first place, maybe even faster than how it grew in the first place. Again, not because people are killing each other, but because people aren't having new people. But this will not be evenly distributed. And that if you can be a country that keeps economically growing and keeps your population growing while the rest of the world is just plummeting, then you'll be the most powerful country just by default. And basically the US is just unstoppable. Like, all we need to do is not mess up. And even then we can actually mess up quite a bit without actually messing up, because it's so hard to mess up the United States.
Yep, I agree with you fully. Consequences of what you say is the disappearance of the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the geopolitical grand game was establishing routes to feed Europe. Gas pipes for Europe, selling merchandise to Europe. Europe is going to disappear as a consumer.
Yes. Yeah.
And that, the mind boggles.
And as a producer. It's disappearing as a consumer and as a producer.
This is done.
Yeah.
This is already a fact.
It will be a museum of old people with pretty buildings and churches and stuff that's also slowly getting eaten alive by migrants if they don't get their act together.
What does it mean? It means that the Chino-Russian complex is self-sufficient. because it neither sells nor buys from Europe. And the US is self-sufficient because it is. And some commerce between
China's not very self-sufficient.
Together with Russia, it is
not energy-wise. Like, I think that China's only able to get about 15 to 20% of its energy from Russia. I think that it still gets about 75% of its energy from the Persian Gulf, basically. And it gets a ton of its food from abroad. Probably Russia is a big source of its food, but the United States, I think, is actually, and Brazil are probably the two biggest sources of food for China. And China, like the US gets microchips and solar panels from China, which are nice to have. China from the United States gets, like, China's dependency on the rest of the world is food and energy. If you don't get food and energy, you die real quick. If you don't get the highest end solar panels, you'll be okay. You know, like the US doesn't need anything from anybody. We make more food than any other country. We make more energy than any other country. And the only things that we get from other countries are like BMWs and solar panels. Right?
BMWs are dead already.
Yeah, even BMW actually makes more BMWs for the United States in the United States than it makes in Bavaria.
Yeah, solar panels is also out of cards. Yeah, I agree with you, but given what I said at the beginning, that the two split the Middle East, Iran goes to China and Saudi Arabia go to the United States, and with the increase of supply, more pipes going from Russia to China, it will work. And of course, there will be commerce between China and America. There's the commerce between enemies all the time in human history.
Yes, that's true. But here's the thing: like,
bon appetit, Andrew.
If the U.S. just like chokes off the energy barrels going from, you know, Iran and Saudi Arabia through Singapore up to China, and we just say choke it off at the Singapore Straits, then China runs out of energy in a few months.
That would lead to World War III.
Well, yes, that would lead to World War III. It's actually something we'd only do if World War III already started. But if World War III were to start, there's a very easy way to end it. Just, all right, you don't have a navy. We have a navy. You don't get your energy from the Middle East. We can either stop it at Singapore. We can stop it at the Straits of Hormuz. We can just stop it wherever we want, and then you're done.
Neil.
I didn't, I've been listening for about maybe 20 or 30 minutes. I didn't know. I want to hear more about what Yoav said about the strike on Putin's residences.
Yeah.
So this, and my initial reaction to Sam when I heard that was, it's a dangerous move to assume your enemy or opponent has no more cards to play. I don't know how good the current Russian version of the Mossad is. I don't know. I haven't heard a thing about secret intelligence in Russia during the course of this war. Maybe they're completely ineffective.
What is the question?
I guess what actually happened?
Okay.
Yeah.
I will first answer what about the Russian Mossad. It was known to be very efficient before the war. Their problem is that they let in Ukrainians freely. I mean, their position was that half of Ukraine is actually Russian, and then the citizens of Ukrainians are automatically allowed to immigrate into Russia, being Russians actually. And with of course, people were escaping the war and going into Russia proper. And among the millions, you can find the thousands who are terrorists. So now this Mossad has a job on their hands that are really struggling to they're really struggling with it, and
So
I
you're
don't
saying
blame.
that there are
I
more
don't blame.
people
I don't
loyal.
blame
Go ahead.
them. Now, this attempt on Russians' residence was by drones, not by sabotage. So
I
it's
gotta run.
irrelevant.
I'll see you guys later.
So it's irrelevant. It was by drones.
Yeah, but Putin, if nothing else, over the last 20 years, strikes me as incredibly cunning and crafty, and I think it's dangerous to underestimate him. And I agree with Sam's assessment that Putin's totally fine dragging this out. I think Putin sees this struggle as a civilizational struggle for, let's say, the future of Western civilization or Russian civilization, you could say. And if it means that his people never get McDonald's or Coca-Cola, I think he's okay with that. And yeah, I think Putin's okay playing the long game if in history it will allow him to be seen by the Russian people as I don't know what the word is, a barrier, a defense, a bulwark against, let's say, postmodern Westernism. So I don't know what Putin wants to do. I don't think he's interested in peace whatsoever. I think he's interested in anything that'll keep out Western influence out of Russia. I think that's what he's interested in. And by influence, I don't mean political influence. I mean cultural, I mean socioeconomic, I mean everything.
My suggestion to you is to just trust what the Russians say. What they say is that want certain 4 regions of Ukraine, they claim them as theirs, and they say that they have no demands further than those 4 regions, and they want security guarantees for Russia. Those 4 regions will already serve as a good cushion between the proper NATO like Poland and Russia. So apart from those 4 regions that they want to claim, they want basically a piece of paper. And I think this is what they really want, and I think this is what they want. That what in the end they're going to get. What they haven't demanded and might want is the city of Odessa. My crystal ball says that they're going to wait patiently to the collapse of the European Union, which will happen for its own internal reasons, and then just going to walk into Odessa without a shot fired.
Yeah, I know Russians view Odessa as their own because of the tourist connection. I think it was like the most popular tourist spot in the Soviet Union, right? No?
The Russians have a very strong historical claim on those regions they claim and on Odessa. Not only because it was a tourist destination. But basically, it is going to be decided by might rather by legality.
So you think Russia actually does want to stop this war? if they get the land regions that
I-
they're asking for. I don't think that's true.
I told you what they demand.
Yeah.
And it's my opinion that they're going to stop at what they demand, excluding the city of Odessa. That's my opinion.
I don't think this war is ending anytime soon. And I think Sam gave pretty much the good reason for it, which is I don't think Putin can or has any reason to stop this war. And same thing, I mean, yeah, the United States and Europe can force Ukraine to accept any peace deal that they're willing to accept. But frankly, I don't think it's very convenient for Europeans, for a lot of Ukrainians to be willing to kill and die for their homeland. And so, as far as I see it, this is one of those intractable situations that I don't see going anywhere until lots more people kill lots more people.
Yeah, the one question that I've thought about recently is like what would happen in the event of a European draft? Are young men I mean it is a funny thing to consider, right? It is funny
Yeah.
because I have a sense that a lot of
what happened? Hilarity will ensue.
yeah, well, a lot of younger men in Europe, and I think even in the United States this is true, but I bet in Europe it's worse. They don't have a sense of national identity or European identity. So it's like, what are they being drafted to fight on behalf of or into? And then what is the mechanism that would enforce a draft?
Nobody in Europe has a European identity except some bureaucrats in Brussels.
Yeah, exactly.
You can ask the question, when will the Pole fight? They will fight for Poland. I don't think that's my thesis, that Russia will never invade Poland. So it will. That's my prediction.
War historically has always been a guaranteed means of putting resentful, displaced men to purpose, good or otherwise.
Not enough of them in Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
And
I would agree that
even
if most men in Europe are resentful and displaced, there's still not enough of them.
Yeah. Well, compared to Russia,
the largest army in Europe used to be the Ukrainian army. The largest army after that is that of Turkey. Now, is Turkey going to war, and on which side, I don't know.
Well, I see a world where as Europe becomes more destabilized, either through migration, economics, if we enter a recession, other possibilities are just the welfare state of Europe. I have no idea how the welfare state of Europe is doing. Like, what's the European version of Medicare or Medicaid? And as their population ages, how does that keep up? And so those strains versus the strain of having to pay more to fund the war in Ukraine, I don't know how that all sorts itself out. Like I don't know if the European Union has enough clout to make a decision for their own defense. I don't even understand actually the difference geopolitically between like if a NATO country is attacked versus the European Union being attacked.
They're virtually the same.
Yeah. With the exception of the United States.
Yeah. Not in Europe. Well, if you talk about the welfare system in Norway, it is good. It will always be good because Norway is rich. In the UK, it is already down the drain, and you have to analyze it country by country. But what the economist would ask: what is the collateral? What is the thing that you sell in order to finance your healthcare system? And they're running out of things to sell.
How have they been financing it since the close to collapse of Greece and since 2009, 2010?
Like everybody, they were financing everything by debt. This is why I'm asking about collateral.
Yeah.
They have no collateral to show for taking any further debt.
Who's Russia selling their oil to for their own financing right now? Is it mostly India or is it China?
India, China, and illegally to anybody.
Yeah.
This is why they're talking about the shadow fleet.
Sorry, is this because what they're talking about? What?
Shadow fleet. They are
shadow fleet.
Fleet. Yeah, Russian tankers who carry oil and are not insured by Lloyd's. And they go around the world and selling oil, and sometimes they got getting sank by the Ukrainians. What does Yoav think about Somaliland? Never heard of it before. I know it's all the rage now, but sorry, my knowledge of Somaliland is patchy.
We got to remember you're in Tel Aviv, so.
Yeah, I know Somaliland is in the news, but who knows what's happening in Somaliland? I don't know if
the other thing I wanted to ask Jacob about is because you speak Farsi, right, Jacob? Yeah. So you've been following. Is there a point at which a protest within Iran hits a tipping point where is there a clear-cut kind of sign you're looking for that, oh, if X happens or Y happens, they're beyond the point of no return in terms of a new government?
There has to, I mean, it's not a matter of a tipping point. There's a matter of a starting point, right? It becomes a viable revolution when there is a viable leader of that revolution. And for the past 50 years now, almost, people have been pretending that the Pahlavi family is that viable. Did you remember the super saturated crystal experiment you did as in elementary school, where you boil water and you dissolve sugar in it and you let it cool, and it looks like just regular sugar water, and then you put a crystal in of sugar, and suddenly the whole thing coalesces? You need that seed crystal. And Pahlavi, Reza Pahlavi, the current crown prince of Iran, as he calls himself, I am very doubtful that he's that seed crystal. And like I said before, all the smartest experts are the ones that agree with me, as opposed to the other experts which don't agree with me, who apparently just don't get it. So I can find you experts who will say Reza Pahlavi could do it. And I have found my experts, which I agree with, who say that he's not a thing.
Does
What?
it always require a leader?
Yes. I
Why?
mean, so the most amazing thing happened in Nepal, and when it happened, I took a screenshot of the Discord vote, which something like 10,000 people got to vote, and I tweeted it out, and I said, this is going to be studied by political scientists for decades, if not centuries. It is the only time I am aware of where discontent was able to gel quickly enough that there was a replacement prime minister chosen, and she became the prime minister of Nepal. And it was a freaking Discord vote. Like somebody on a Discord server did like, okay, 5 choices, and there were 10,000 people, each of which were probably like half of them were probably, representing 5 to 1,000 people each. And
How did they do identity confirmation within a Discord vote? Nepalese identity.
Good question. This wasn't the Middle East. This was closer to your wife's territory.
I know where Nepal is, but you still have to, have some sort of real identification.
They did a Discord vote, and the next day she was the prime minister of Nepal. Explain that to me. Before that example, I cannot give you another example, and frankly, I wouldn't have believed that it happened. So, is there a Discord server in Farsi somewhere where people are taking a vote?
Well, how much control over the internet do common Iranians have? So, A, I've heard the government can shut down the internet, but B, I heard people get access to Starlink. And can the typical person access the internet in spite of the government in Iran? So
Starlink is not a real option unless you're very rich and have a death wish, as far as I know. When people get an ISP in Iran, what I have heard is that ISP quote just comes along with a VPN quote, because what's the point of getting an internet service if you don't have a VPN? And so, yeah, all Iran can do is either shut off the entirety of the internet, which is not something that they can sustain long term, or have a lot of people who have. Okay, so Iran's literacy rate, I don't think, is as high as they claim. Iran's population is not as young as it used to be, but I mean, it's still a pretty young population, and there's a lot of people who aren't affording an ISP with VPNs. So what percentage of the population have ISPs without VPNs? I would say, I don't know, 10, 15. I would say 10 to 15% of the population has a VPN, right? The thing is, that's enough to penetrate the information, like the information gets out. And there's a YouTube channel that's just like state propaganda that I watch just to see what the state propaganda is. But yeah, how did we get in on this?
Well, I'm curious regarding their capacity to mobilize, to communicate, to coordinate, whether they can maintain some capacity to coordinate even during let's say, government crackdown on protests. Like North Korea, for instance, their smartphones do not even have internet.
Yeah, I mean, Iran it could never be as repressive as North Korea, mostly because Iran doesn't. The central government in Iran does not have like the type of control over the entire country that the vast majority of Americans imagine every country does. It's just not that much of a unified government.
Is there any chance of the military itself turning against the government?
That is the hope that a lot of people have. So Iran has its army, its military, and then it has the Revolutionary Guard. The Revolutionary Guard runs the country. There have been indications that there are people either in the Revolutionary Guard or in the, and there are also statist militias. So there are the militias that are unofficial. They're called the Basijis. So there are militias which are in support of the government. There's the Revolutionary Guard, which is basically the military dictatorship that runs Iran. And then there's the army, which, as you would expect, the Revolutionary Guard makes sure is run by a lot of people who believe in following orders, right? So there are people who hope that the army would be willing to overthrow the shackles of the Revolutionary Guard. I think that's ridiculous.
Well, to what extent, because something I think about is, to what extent is a government only tenable to the extent that people believe in the idea of the thing? So USSR, for instance, if Ukrainians within the USSR cease believing in the USSR, or if Kazakhs or Afghans, etc., and they begin to believe more so in a level of principality, one level below that. So what I'm saying is, like, collectively, there has to be some sort of belief level that sustains an Islamic government, even if it's just illusory. Like, if it falls below a certain belief level, like we no longer believe in Sharia law or something, like, you get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying. And Libya is a good example of that, and probably Somalia as well, which is, it is definitely possible for a culture which is immature, let's say, uncivilized enough for people to be willing to take anarchy over whatever is the proposed government. But vast majority of people realize, and if they didn't realize before the revolutionary fervor, they realize within a couple of weeks, if not, and at most months, oh yeah, living in Libya is worse than living under the Islamic Republic.
Gaddafi, yeah.
Yeah. Well, no. So in Libya, people, I mean, Gaddafi was dead. That was the problem. They can't go back to Gaddafi. I think the vast majority of people living in Libya probably today would prefer Gaddafi to what they have. And frankly, in Iran, if a situation like exists in Libya were to exist, you would see a resurgence of the Islamic Republic pretty quickly. And that's why I say that there has to be a viable alternative. Because Iran is sophisticated and mature enough and civilized enough of a culture that they're not going to let it become anarchy.
Yeah. They once thought the same thing about Venezuela.
What do you mean?
Well, Venezuela had the highest per capita GDP, I think, in the 70s of any South American country, right? No?
Well, I mean, if you mean, look, going down the wrong road with a bad idea can go down that wrong road for a pretty long time and continue to destroy things. That's not anarchy, right? So having, for example, the Castro regime or the Maduro regime or whatever, Papadoc in Haiti, right? That's an option. It's a bad option, but yeah, Mad Maxing, as Ron calls it, that's not sustainable. And so you are right that it's possible for the Islamic regime to lose enough legitimacy to crumble, but if there's no viable alternative, it will come back with a fervor.
How much of the current strain is due to embargoes, basically political pressure on Iran?
Well, the water crisis is completely one of mismanagement and stupidity.
Yeah.
Like, it's not the embargo that's causing the water crisis.
Basically, what I'm asking, I think the question beneath the question of what I'm asking is, how much do the Iranian people blame on the government or those in power versus outside influence, whether it be the United States, Israel, etc.? And how has that changed, that ratio of who they blame? How has that changed over the last 20 to 30 years?
Okay, so oftentimes when someone shows any interest in learning about Iran, I I recommend a fiction book called Uncle Napoleon, which has been translated to English and is very much in Iran considered a kind of like a modern day political classic. And it's about a family that's ruled by a patriarch who thinks he's Napoleon, basically, and is constantly fighting against the influence of the British in, for example, his favorite Bush dying, right? Because obviously the Queen of England ordered that. And I mean, and Iranians recognize this as a major strain in the thinking. Like that family's situation is kind of a anthropomorphizing of Iranian politics for Iranians. And so there has been a there has been a deep strain of Iranians imagining a level of it's kind of like a learned helplessness, where Iranians so much imagine that people in Europe, specifically France, England, and the United States, are making every decision in Iran, that it's amazing to the point that how many people believe that, right? So I can't give you a number. I can say that it's so deep in Iranian culture, this idea that we don't rule what we do, and which has been pretty much true for the past 200 years, right? At least 200 years, right? That we don't control what happens in our country, that there's definitely a lot of that. But also, Iran has deep cultural roots and development and civilization, which I think make it more amenable to an actual change than most of the Arab countries. Then I think Afghanistan and really even Pakistan. I mean, yeah, Pakistan's a whole other thing. But as I said earlier, I think the only viable alternative right now to, like, if Khamenei dies, I think the best hope is that Khomeini's grandson, Khomeini was the first Ayatollah, Khamenei is the second, and he's very old. And when he dies, the two real, the top two candidates are Khamenei, who's the second. I'll call him K2 because Americans can never remember Khomeini and Khamenei. So K1, the first Ayatollah, K2, the second Ayatollah, right? K1 has a grandson who could become K3, and K2 has a son who could become the next Ayatollah. I am hoping that K1's grandson is able to take power as an actual religious figure instead of K2's son, who would be a figurehead for the IRGC. And while that ostensibly would look no different from what the Islamic Republic has been since 1979, I think that's as close to regime change as we could possibly get. And I mean, we were talking about this earlier. I think Yoav, from a larger geopolitical standpoint, was saying that that's the type of thing that Russia and China would prefer as well. And yeah, K2's son has the support of the IRGC because he will be a puppet for the IRGC. So those are the things that I see happening, which has nothing to do with the protests going on now, unless K2 were to simply die during the protests right now, which, of course, then Israel would be blamed if that were to happen. But other than that, I mean, the protests right now are not something that, again, because there's nobody, like, if K1's grandson Hassan Khamenei suddenly got behind these protests and used it to try to take over, yeah, maybe. But why would he do that when K2 is going to die hopefully soon and he's in his 80s? Why would you take that risk? Did I say anything interesting?
Well, I don't know if the people are more likely to, if the people, because K2 is old and nearing the end of his life, and I assume he's mostly negatively viewed by the populace.
Over 80% probably hate him.
Yeah.
But that includes the people who want a genuine theocracy as opposed to a theocracy being led by basically imagine if the Pope were chosen by the King of France, right?
Real theocracy has never been tried.
Exactly. So K2 is not an actual religious leader the way K1 was.
Mhm.
And so there's a lot of people who feel like if we go back to an actual Ayatollah, unlike Khamenei, things will be better. And that's why I think K1's grandson has a viable chance of becoming the next supreme leader.
We were asked whether the Iranian government has any surprising technology they can take out of a hat to use in the last moment. They were working hard on the nuclear weapons, and that will not be ready for this round. So they're trying to collect as much of conventional weapons as they can.
Rockets mostly.
Oh, yeah, rockets, and quantity makes quality.
Well, hasn't most of Iran's military apparatus been wiped out by their recent conflict with Israel? And
Let's say just a half. Now they were working hard to acquire this to replenish.
There definitely are views, I think, which are probably right, that
I
the
will turn the
protests,
Buddha when I have a shower.
that the protests right now are a result of the humiliating defeat during the 12-day war. And it was a humiliating defeat. And it showed the weakness of Iran's military leadership. But also, I mean, the wiping out of Hezbollah has also really humiliated Iran.
It's mainly reflects on their aspiration in Iraq, because now they have no influence outside of their border.
A real Shiite theocracy would look like the Hausa in Najaf, which is in Iraq, actually being deemed the religious authority in Iran. And the fact that that has never happened and could never happen is kind of like, imagine a Catholic country which claims that it's a Catholic country, but they won't let the Pope choose who their archbishop is. That's the situation.
I appreciate you answering my questions and giving me a crash course on some things.
My pleasure. I love talking and hearing my own voice.
So,
well, we have some
feels
people who are
like,
distinctly qualified. No, I'll let you jump in, Jonathan. I'm going to drop, but thank you.
Minnesota might be the Middle East of the United States. So does that qualify as Middle East chat?
You want to talk about Somalia?
Not necessarily Somalia. I want to talk about the United States.
I thought, I mean, Minnesota and Somalia, like, what's the difference?
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. I don't know anymore.
Okay, Toyon Gade just appeared. You missed nothing. We just said we have no idea what's going to happen in Iran, and we cannot get to any consensus about what's going to happen in Ukraine. So you can jump in now.
Also, I mean, you could listen to the past 2 hours at double speed and get back to us in an hour, but we probably won't be here. So what do you want to talk about with regard to...
Well, I mean, how much under the surface does this iceberg live? I mean...
Which iceberg?
The Minnesota fraud iceberg. I mean... I gotta believe California has its own skeletons.
No. So apparently part of this has to do with Minnesota Nice.
Hmm.
California has been playing the DEI game long enough that the level of corruption, obvious corruption. I mean, California does have certainly its level of corruption, but the feedback loop
Yeah.
that existed in Minnesota was, I believe, came from. It's kind of like what happened with the American Indians and European viruses. Like the Europeans were used to their own viruses,
Hmm.
and the Native Americans in the Americas did not have that type of immune system.
Okay, so Tim Walz is an Indian who got invaded by
Not
Somali
Tim
Europeans.
individually. The government of Minnesota, yes.
Okay, so Minnesota is the only nice state in the union.
No,
So who else? Who else is a nice state?
Wisconsin might Wisconsin.
Do you have to be? Do you have to be a red or blue state to have this
I
problem?
Minnesota
has never really been even purple.
Okay, so
what states in our nice Midwest might have more of this graft going on?
So one thing I have learned about red states is that, as somebody who's lived in Los Angeles basically my entire life, I had seen the level of corruption among the Democrats here, the obvious corruption, and I had imagined that nothing of this sort could exist. Then I went to South Dakota, and I saw the level of red state corruption that exists. And it was shocking to me.
In South Dakota?
Yeah.
How long did you spend in South Dakota?
2 days.
Okay. Versus your entire life in LA? Come on.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
It was so obvious. It was so drastic. I could not believe my eyes.
Okay.
So I was viewing so imagine you're an electrician, right?
Okay.
And you're used to seeing a lot of people doing some janky things.
Okay.
And then you go down south and you see some real deep redneck janky electrician work, and you're like, oh my god, how is this bad? That's what it felt like as somebody who, here in Los Angeles studied the real estate market and the level of government corruption with regards to real estate tricks and rent seeking, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, that's just Derek Eretz, right? What's
No.
happening in South Dakota that was such a
that's-
smoking gun after 2 days?
Okay, the smoking gun.
I don't disagree. I'm incredulous.
Okay, the smoking gun was. So I went to nearby Sturgis. Okay.
Okay.
And I was, I got an Airbnb and I looked at the prices of land and the tax base and how the tax base, how people were being taxed and how the money was flowing. and it became very, very clear to me that the government, like there are people in government who realize how much money. So there's a lot of people who can't fathom, who have a lot more understanding of the value of something without understanding the value of revenue flow, right? Because revenue flow can be much, much bigger than the. So a piece of land can generate a lot of income and be worth and can sell for very little money, or it can generate very little income and still be worth a lot of money. And then there's the differential in potential. Like, no, South Dakota was corrupt in a red state way, where the people were like, keep the government away from me, which was allowing for the corruption in ways that, like, it's I would have to write a book, but I never understood why people in my public administration and law classes were always talking about the corruption among the Republicans and how corrupt Republicans are. And I thought, no, you're just lying about the Republicans to make them sound worse than what I manifestly see around me. And then I found out that I was just poorly informed. And no, the Republicans, like Dick Cheney, is even more. Dick Cheney is more corrupt than Mark Ridley Thomas, or what's the name of that woman who's the Democrat, who's the lead of the banking committee from Los Angeles?
Maxine Waters?
Yeah. So Dick Cheney is more corrupt than Maxine Waters, which was shocking to me. I did not realize that that was true, because I did not think you could be more obviously and horribly corrupt than Maxine Waters. The depth of their corruption was shocking to me.
So you need a Sanhedrin.
Mi Yoshev Barosh. That's Hebrew for, and who gets to sit on top.
I think the three of us would be a pretty good start.
I would definitely prefer Yoav as the head of the Sanhedrin to a lot of people I could imagine actually becoming the head of the Sanhedrin, and that includes every single living person who has been a chief rabbi of Israel. I am not aware of a single person who is currently alive who. No, Rabbi Amar, I believe, is still alive. Yeah, he might make a better head of the Sanhedrin than Yoav, but he's probably it.
There is a psak halacha from the Rabbi Shaki that you are allowed to say bad thing about politicians. You're allowed to.
You're allowed to speak Lashon Hara?
Yeah, on politicians.
Yeah, you're allowed to gossip about politicians, yes.
All right, well, that's it for me.
So, yes, I think the corruption might be vast in other small states. I don't think it's going to include New York, Florida, California, or Texas.
So you don't think this is going to go anywhere else, really?
Oh, I mean, Wisconsin, Michigan, sure.
how much splash damage do you think this will cause, and how?
I think it's hard to know, but
Predict New Year's for the Goys.
I think it's possible that this will cost the Democrats the 2026 elections. Maybe it might be worthwhile for. I mean, Christopher Rufo definitely has planned it, and he's made it precisely what he wants the Republican Party to run on for the midterms. And Christopher Rufo is a man of the left, despite the fact that right now he's working on the right.
We're all men of the left.
Yeah, I mean, basically, we are. If you're involved in this whole thing, you probably are a man of the left.
We were reading yesterday the story about Achav and the vineyard of Navot.
Mm-hmm.
And this is only one of many stories in the Bible which are very clear on the fact that the Jews do not want a theocracy. That if there anything the Bible preaches is that thou shalt not have a theocracy. I'm not clear about what is the recommended form of government, except going back to tribal arrangement.
The king shouldn't be sitting on the Sanhedrin.
Yeah. And I was thinking, what is the definition of a king? King is somebody who can take your vineyard without paying or kill you for your vineyard.
Aaron Barak.
Exactly. Because the government in Israel cannot do that.
Aaron Barak can.
But the court can.
Yeah. It's shocking how much the two of us agree.
Yes, but I make it a habit on the TLC to agree with everybody I come out with as much as possible and disagree as little as possible.
Uh-huh.
Sam has left us, but I completely disagree with him about his analysis of the politics in Europe. But I would have not have gone on arguing my point, even if he stayed. Anyway, you don't argue with the Google data scientist.
You don't argue with what?
A Google data scientist.
Yeah. I mean, Sam is very smart and often right. I don't think his view of what's going on in Russia and Ukraine is as informed as his views usually are.
But to go back to Europe, whenever I see a global great game analysis, it's always about the competition between different suppliers over the European market. For example, what is considered to be a wise commentator about the politics of the Middle East would say something like, Qatar wants to lay a pipe to feed the European market, so they have to pass through Turkey, and they have to pass through Saudi Arabia, and this is the moves they are taking. Iran wants to lay up a pipe to feed Europe. This is why they have to go through Turkey, and this is how they conducted the politics. India wants a supply line to the European market. This is why they need to ship it to the Saudi Arabia and move it by truck to Israel, etc., etc., etc. What happens to any analysis I ever heard when you just delete Europe from the map? I mean, suddenly the great game does not have a purpose. And that's a realization that I just got sort of days ago, and I'm still struggling with it.
I was trying to find a map that I first encountered when I was in undergraduate at USC. So back then the internet was new, and the way crazy ideas spread most was people would go and create newsletters which their fanatics would distribute on college campuses. And I don't know if you've heard of Lyndon LaRouche and the LaRoucheites. So Lyndon LaRouche was a perennial candidate for president in the 80s and 90s, maybe the 70s too. I don't know. He ran for president from a jail cell for tax evasion. And his acolytes had their newspaper, which they would come and sell alongside with the Nation of Islam and other people of similar persuasions. And that newspaper was the first time I had ever heard of Prince Philip, who was the prince consort of Queen Elizabeth II. I had never seen a picture of him before, and their newspaper was quite adamant that he was indeed the ruler of the world, being the king of the United Kingdom, and he was running things secretly from behind. And they had this map, which was the most wondrous map I had ever seen, and has left an impression on me ever since. You see, the only thing keeping everyone from living an absolutely wondrous lifestyle and having plenty of everything you could ever need is the cost of transportation. And in order to get rid of any cost, have zero cost transport, basically, what you need to do is connect all of humanity with one large railroad system. And they had a map of this railroad system, which included tracks that went across the Bering Strait from Alaska to Russia, and from Thailand and through Malaysia and Indonesia down to Australia and New Zealand, and a link across the Atlantic, right? So somebody had drawn this, just like taken a world map and just connected with the markers all the major population centers. And this was going to be the answer to all of the world's problems. Now, you are an engineer. What do you think about the viability of such a railroad system?
From Australia to the kind of product that Australia offers, shipping is better.
But like, just imagine if they even built the railroad, which I don't think it was possible, but imagine they built it. Like, what would one winter do to this railroad system? Right?
Yeah, this is why we don't have a railway system to Eilat. Because the road is flooded. Every once in a while, every several years, there's rain.
Uh-huh.
And then everything you built is washed away.
Okay. And so people, for some reason, I mean, even with things that are as solid as a railroad system, people will have these ideas in their mind that are just in reality so far away from any possible thing. And with politics, they do it far more. Right? So you have an idea about how, pipelines, like you were explaining, from here to there, like the whole point is, if Europe ceased to exist in a moment, that would certainly disrupt the normal status of things.
What would be the objective of the Great Game?
There is no great game.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking fluid dynamics. There's too many different things trying to exert influence on too many different things. It's like the weather, right? There's no one weather pattern, and you're not going to predict the weather because it's too complex.
Yeah.
And 8 billion human beings and how they behave is even more complex than the weather, believe it or not.
Yeah. Because they undergo sudden phase changes.
And
as far as I talk to my friends, the physicists,
yeah,
what kills every attempt and prediction is phase change.
A what change?
Phase change, like the condensation of the sugar in the teapot.
Okay.
The right term for it is a phase change.
Okay.
And when it happens, and it happens suddenly the whole equation is different.
Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's the crystal experiment is phase change. Uh-huh. Yeah.
And people do phase change.
Yep, they do.
The Reformation, for example.
I think Vervaeke is quite astute in his statement that the creation of an alphabet was a revolution in humanity that was then superseded by the printing press, which the internet is again having a similar thing. I don't think enough people are paying attention to the election on Discord in Nepal.
Yeah, I had my pensive moment when people were afraid maybe my video stream stopped. And I was trying to gather all my knowledge about Nepal and why would it happen in Nepal and what was happening there. Yes, it is interesting, but I think it's a small enough place for such things to happen.
So let me show you something absolutely amazing. And for the people who are very much into semiotics, I guess the word is symbology, the symbolic world types, this should tell you something about Nepal. That is the flag of Nepal right there. And what makes it different from the flag of every other country in the world? No.
No, I'm quite strong in geometry.
It's not a rectangle.
I used to know why and I forgot.
It is the only country in the entire world which has a flag that isn't a rectangle.
And why is that so?
They're nonconformists
Okay.
in a way that the rest of the world is not. I mean, that for me, I don't know very much about Nepal. I have a neighbor whose dog very much likes to play with my new puppy, who is from Nepal. I spoke to him briefly. I don't know how much I agree with the things that he said, but he speaks Nepalese and he's been to Nepal, so he knows a lot more than I do. And at Jason's wedding, there was somebody who had come in from Nepal, and I asked her questions. And for me, like when you're a social studies, when you're a political science student, and you have interest in international relations, okay, you look at the globe and you look at various maps, but you also, sometimes just look through the listings of all the countries, and usually there's a flag there, and Nepal always stood out. So is this patternicity? Here we have a standout election, and they have a standout flag, and maybe I'm connecting two things that aren't related. But to some extent, I have to say, I think they probably are related, because no other country even imagined, like, countries have changed flags. I've never seen a country even consider having a flag that wasn't a rectangle. So I don't know if what happened in Nepal can be replicated, but it's
I think that a flag has a religious meaning in Nepal.
Mhm.
That they use flags as a matter of religion, and their flag is reminiscence of the flag they used in the religion. That's my guess.
I mean, I can read you what Wikipedia says.
Yep. What did they say?
The flag of Nepal is a concave pentagonal flag of red, white, and blue color. It is used as both the state and civil flag of Nepal. It is the only non-rectangular national flag in the world. The flag's unique shape is a combination of three single trapeze and is known as a double pennon. Historically, triangular-shaped flags in South Asia are very common since it was compact in size, so the flag furled even with the lowest wind, thus making it visible over long distances. The traces of triangular flags could be found in Hinduism. The flag's history is vague, and there are no specific accounts of its creator, Nepal has historically used both quadrilateral flags as well as non-quadrilateral flags throughout its history. The flags of almost all states in South Asia was once triangular. A 1928 French book about Nepal shows a double pennant flag with a green border rather than the modern blue. There are other forms of pennant type flags, mostly used in Hindu and Buddhist temples around Nepal. Yeah, so apparently it was popular once.
Yeah, but it has religious root. And in Israel, a lifeguard will put that a flag on its booth, either blue, red, or black, and it will always be triangular because of this wind behavior.
Yeah.
You want it to fly. You want the people to see the flag, so you make it triangular.
Okay, so maybe the Nepalese want to be seen more than other people.
So it's the one exception, and it's the better one.
Is it the better one? Why do we end up with rectangular flags? Because they're easier to mass produce.
It's one stage less in production, because you always produce a piece of cloth as square, and you will need to cut it in two to make it triangular. But it's not an important consideration.
I'm guessing that's why we ended up with rectangular flags, because I think before there were looms and mills and factories producing textiles, I think there were a much broader variety of shapes.
Anyway, Christian's country will always need the flag to be square in order to paint the cross on it.
There's that. Yeah. No. But all the Muslim countries also have square flags.
I don't know if traditionally they had flags at all. If it's not a Western invention.
Doesn't the Caliphate claim that their flag goes all the way back to Muhammad? The Black Standard, also known as the Banner of the Eagle, or simply as the Banner, is one of the Islamic flags flown by the Islamic prophet Muhammad, according to Muslim tradition. It was historically used by Abu Muslim in his uprising leading to the Abbasid revolution in 747, and is therefore associated with the Abbasid Caliphate in particular. It is also a symbol in Islamic eschatology, heralding the advent of the Mahdi, though this tradition is weak according to Hadithic standards. Arab armies in the 7th century used standards to identify themselves on the field of battle. Among these standards, the Raya was a square banner, not to be confused with the Liwa or Alam, an identifying mark like a red turban. Islamic tradition states that the Quraysh had a black Liwa and a black and white Raya. It further states that Muhammad had an Alam in white nicknamed the Young Eagle, and a Raya in black, said to be made from his wife Aisha's headcloth. This larger flag was known as the eagle. The Hadith reports Muhammad said that the advent of the Mahdi would be signaled by black standards proceeding from Khorasan, and that it will be the flag of the army that will fight the Masih ad-Dajjal, which is the Antichrist, at the Battle of Siffin. According to tradition, Ali used the liwa of the Prophet, which was white, while those who fought against him instead used black banners.
What is a banner? What shape is a banner?
Banner, I believe, is also rectangular.
Mm. So what is the difference between a banner and a flag?
I don't know that there is a difference. I mean, apparently there's a difference between a liwa and a raya. A raya was a square banner, while a liwa, I guess a liwa was a rectangular one. Let me see what a liwa is. Liwa, ensign or banner, has developed various meanings in Arabic. A banner in all senses: flag, advertising banner, election publicity banner, a district, a level of military unit, an officer commanding a unit of liwa units, now equivalent to a major general. In Turkish, liwa was used interchangeably with sancak to describe the second administrative divisions in which the provinces of the Ottoman Empire were divided.
Okay, this is a lot to digest in.
Yes, this is all news to me.
A banner is hung from the middle like a scroll. Okay. Okay, it's 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
And it's a Shabbat. Need to have my rest.
Shabbat Shalom, Yoav.
Have fun.
I think I am going to say good night as well.
I'm going to use host's prerogative to put the Reverend Parcells to bed because he does need to get up in the morning.
Sorry, Reverend. Thank you.
But before he goes, I have a question. Let's say, God forbid, that I were to burn somebody at the stake for not being a Trinitarian. And I did not repent of that. Is that a salvation issue?
Sometimes Jacob takes that devil's advocate thing too
Isn't
far.
there a proverb that says something like, "Don't answer a fool according to his folly"?
But there's a proverb that says, "Answer a fool according to his folly."
There is. Exactly right. I'm going to leave it to you guys to determine, which of those was applicable in this situation as I go. So, but anyhow, good.
Thank you, Reverend.
Good to
Thank
chat
you.
with you all.
Thank you.
Good night.
The